Hey everyone, and welcome to my starting character guide video for Frosthaven. This is a compiling of all of my first impressions videos for each of the different classes. So I did do a individual long video on each of the individual classes for Frosthaven. You can find those videos in my channel below. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. It really helps me out on YouTube. I'm trying to grow the channel, but without further ado, let's just crack straight into it because I want to try and keep this one short. So throughout this video, I'm going to be using the actual class symbols in reference. So we'll just go through those quickly just so that everyone knows what they are. So we've got the Banner Spear here, we've got the Blink Blade, we've got the Drifter, we've got the Deathwalker, we've got the Geminate, and we have the Necromancer. So I'm going to be using those symbols to refer throughout this time. Okay, so the first thing I took a look at is I looked at the kind of classic archetypes in Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, of what kind of are good metrics to measure like how good a character is at a certain type of thing. So to preface this is me. I've been looking at the cards. These are my thoughts. Again, this is only taking up, I think, up to level 3 into consideration was the only cards that were available to me at the time. So again, some of these may change as time goes on. However, this is sort of a good snapshot, I think, of how this character kind of fits into the different roles that you get in Gloomhaven. So I'll go through the different kind of categories and then we'll go through the different classes and why I rank them at different ways. So the tanking category here, this I've basically ranked solely on shield, retaliate, and heal self only. So if a character has got good shielding capabilities, if they've got good retaliate, because retaliate does encourage you to get attacked, so I see that as a kind of a nod to wanting to tank a little bit, and self heal, because self heal is not something you can do to somebody else, but you can obviously be self-sufficient by doing that. With damage, very self-explanatory. What kind of damage can they do? I've also taken into account sort of poison and wound into this, because that is basically adding damage in one way or another. So I've added that into there too. So any kind of poisoning and wounding effects are also included within that. Damage was actually quite a hard category for me to classify, because I mean all characters in Gloomhaven do good damage or have the potential to do good damage. So that was kind of a difficult one to really sort of nail down. Support. So support, this is to do with you being able to heal your allies, you being able to bless your allies, strengthen your allies, or perhaps you can give them bonuses in different things that you can do. So maybe you can shield your allies, you can give them extra attacks, things like that. So, or move them around, for example. So support is sort of a general term for those sorts of abilities. For control, now control is specifically to do with sort of negative effects mostly. Stun, immobilize, disarm, push and pull, all of that is included within control. So this is just your ability to manipulate enemies, manipulate the battlefield, or control the battlefield to your advantage, essentially. All right, so we'll go into the first class, which is the Geminate, and I'll sort of explain very quickly why I've ranked them these ways. So for tank, they get a 5. So they actually do have quite a lot of ways that they can sort of tank. They do have some shielding abilities, they do have some retaliate abilities, but I see them much more as like an off tank. It's somebody who can probably jump in and maybe tank for a little bit for you. They're not somebody who's going to be maybe your main focus or something that you could focus on as something you could do. I don't think that they would be a viable character to just solely build as a tank, or at least I wouldn't advise it to begin with. So that's why I've gone for 5 there. Damage, I've gone with 8. They've got a lot of high damage potential. This could maybe even be higher, but I think 8 was fair to do with the amount of damage that they can possibly do while using their elements. It's very important that they use these elements to get these max effects. So good damage potential. Support, I've put a 1. I think I found one card in which they could heal allies. It's not a focus of their character. It's not something that they're going to do. So I've put them as just a 1 there, pretty simple. Control, 4. They've got a bit of immobilize and they've got a bit of curse. So again, they're not particularly strong at control, but they have a nice little toolbox there of a few things that could help you out. So I've rated them as a 4 there. Okay, on to the Deathwalker. So tank 1, absolutely not a tanking character whatsoever. The only reason that I haven't given them a 0 here and I've given them a 1 is they do have that one card that allows them to basically take some damage and then disappear again and just negate all damage for a turn. So in a very niche situation, this person could jump in and take some damage. So I've given them a 1. I've tried to not score anybody a 0 for anything unless they literally have no other thing. And I could, every class at least had something that they could do in each of these categories. So I didn't want to give anybody a 0, but this would be pretty damn close to a 0. Damage. All right, so damage for this one, I've given them an 8. Again, very high damage potential. They've got to work for it a bit with their shadows and stuff, but I think they've got a good source of damage that they can repeat pretty consistently. So 8 for damage there. Yep, strong. Support 1. Again, I think that they have one niche card in which they can actually heal allies if they're adjacent to shadows and things. It's niche. It's probably not going to come off most of the time. Yes, you may use it. So again, I've given them a 1 for that because yes, they do have a card that can support. Control, I've given them a 2. They don't really have much control at all. I think I saw some things where they could maybe curse or push and pull. Again, controlling the battlefield is not their strong point. So, the Drifter. So the Drifter tank for 7. I think they have some very strong suite of tanking cards. They have a persistent ability that allows them to shield, and they can also retaliate. They can heal themselves. They can build shield up. They've just got a really good suite of cards to go tanking. You do have to, with the Drifter, it's interesting, and with all of these, you know, if you're going to focus on one thing, then you're kind of pulling away from another category. So if they're going to focus on tanking, then they're probably going to lose out a little bit on the damage category or on, you know, the support category potentially, you know. So this is just on the face of it of what they could do with just those cards. However, obviously if you go down the tanking route, then you know you're going to be pulling points away from these other things here. But I think that they have some of the strongest tanking potential, and to be honest, they might actually be the best tank available from the starting classes, maybe. Damage 7, very consistent damage if you went down that route, because they have these persistent abilities that will allow you to amp up your damage. So damage wise, I think that they can be very strong. They're very consistent with damage. They're not doing very many AoEs, which is why I've marked them down to a 7 here compared to an 8, because some of the other classes have a lot more ways of doing AoE damage, and this character does not, so until they get to another level, and then it's a burn, so it's not really reliable. So they're very single target heavy, but they can do good amount of damage with that. You know, they can attack for 4 pretty much consistently every turn, which is a great attack, and you're going to kill a lot of stuff with that. So yeah. Support, I've given them a 6 because again they have a really strong suite of support heal cards. They're probably, in terms of the total number of heal and the potential heals that they can give out throwing around, they're pretty much the highest here. They've got a lot of ways to be able to heal their allies, heal themselves. They can use a persistent ability to increase the amount that they heal. I think that this could be quite a strong support character too. The Drifter, we knew going into this, or if you've looked at my Drifter video, you know going into it that he is very, very consistent. So very good across sort of these first 3 categories, and that is sort of like the almost kind of like the characteristic of that character, is that they are a very, like the Drifter, they're good at everything. Good at everything, not particularly maybe amazing at anything in particular. So control, they've got a 1 because I think he had a model. He had a ranged model attack, and that was it. So again, I try not to give people 0, but this is pretty damn close to a 0 for control. The Necromancer, we've got 7 for tank. Now I've put an asterisk here because I've marked this as a 7 because I feel like although themselves as a character will not be doing any tanking, their summons will be doing quite a bit of tanking, and I think there is a lot of potential here to allow them to do that. So this could be lower, this could be higher. This is a very strange mark to give to this character, so I've been a bit cautious with the way that I've marked this. I've given him a 7 because I feel like they are going to be probably pretty strong tanking character, because they'll be able to keep resummoning stuff. You know, if stuff dies, it's fine, just resummon it again, especially once they get up to higher levels and they get that card that allows them to spread get damage around, I think that's going to be pretty crazy. In fact, it might even allow them to tank a little bit. So the tanking potential here is very high, but like the raw kind of card. So I had to take summons into account a little bit here with this. Well, I had to mainly base this off of summons. So this is, yeah, so this mark is... That's why I put an asterisk there, because I'm not convinced at the mark. It could be higher, it could be lower, it depends. Damage, again, I've put this with an asterisk because I feel like they do have potential to do damage, but all of their damage is very small attacks. So against like shielded enemies, I feel like they're going to struggle because they do most of their damage through their summons who have low attack values. Yes, you can increase those attack values, and there are things that you can do. However, they do also have some really big, you know, kind of swingy plays available to them. So they have ways in which perhaps they could actually do a huge attack and do lots of damage. So Necromancer, damage, interesting. I think that this could go higher. Again, this character is a lot more in a grey area in these categories. Support, I put them as a 2. I put them as a 2 because they do have one really good heal if they manage to use a lot of elements and use it. It can be quite a big heal. And I like it when you have a character who perhaps they don't have lots of heals, but they have one way of really going here and have a lot of health, because that can help out. You don't really want to spend, you know, multiple turns going, oh, I'm going to heal you for 2, then I'm going to heal you for 2 again, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. It doesn't really work. You know, it kind of becomes a bit boring, and it's like, wow, I'm just healing every turn, right? Whereas it's nice if you can just do, yeah, here's like a heal 4 or a heal 6 or something like that, and just really help somebody out. Control, I've given them a 4 here, and this is a consideration to the amount of cursing that this character can do. There are many ways that this character can curse, and as the game goes on, curses can get very strong. So 4, I think, is where I'm at with this, because cursing is maybe not something that would immediately have a benefit. You know, stunning something is obviously much, much better than that. However, cursing as the game goes on can really add up and can really help save you some damage. So I've given them a fair score for that. So onto the Banner Spear. This was, again, a really difficult character to be able to score. Tank-wise, this was the one that, going forward, I was thinking this is going to be high on the tank scale. Looking at the cards, I'm not convinced. You've got one card that gives you a persistent a shield for the entire scenario. You burn a card and it gives you a shield for the entire scenario. You lose some range, but you get shield 1. That is incredibly strong. That is a very strong tanking card, and I think I probably based pretty much all of my assumptions on tanking off of that one card. Now, looking at the other cards that they have, they don't really have a huge amount of retaliate. They do have another way to shield against ranged enemies, which is situational. It might, you know, it can be very good, but also not going to be something you're going to want to use all the time. And they have ways of healing their allies, but they take damage themselves, so they do have some heals and stuff. It's, you know, I thought that I was going to come out of this thinking that the Banner Spear is the best tank that you can get from the starting classes, and I'm not convinced. I think it's still strong, but I'm not convinced it's going to be you know, your 100% tank. I think that they're going to be spread out a lot more. The damage is going to need to be spread out a bit more with the Banner Spear. Okay, damage. I've given them an 8 here with Asterisk. This could be this could be a 9. I really was very close to giving this a 9. The reason for this is, and the reason why I've sort of put a little bit of a mark there, is because this class has huge damage potential. You can do a lot of damage with this class because you can reoccur a lot of their cards as long as you can set up these formations that it requires. So the Banner Spear, to me, it could well be the highest damage output character that you can get from the starting classes, but you have to play it very, very well, and the situations all have to line up. So that's why there's an asterisk there. I think it's probably going to end up on average being an 8, but it has a potential to be a 9. Support, I've given them quite a high support mark here. I've given them a 6 because this is a bit of a consideration to banners. So because of the banner mechanic and the fact that they can put down these things that give all allies a heal 1, you know, all allies shield, all allies extra attack, they actually can play quite a nice support role where they can really help the team, you know, improve indefinitely. Like, they can just improve the team. They lift the team around them, which is very thematic to their character, and I think supporting could be very strong. So I've put an asterisk there because you may not want to play the banners. You know, the banners may not be something that you do, you know, but I think the banners are the best support things currently available. So, but they're not something that you're going to want to be playing all the time. Also, they can move characters around. I'm not convinced that's going to be incredible, but that is a consideration too. The fact that they can allow other characters to move, which is interesting. Could help out an ally maybe in a pinch when they need to get away from trouble. So that's why I've given it a 6. So control, I've given them a 5 because they have some really strong control cards too. They have some, they have disarm, they have immobilize, they have muddles. They are a pretty strong. I mean, they don't. The only issue with them is again with the formations and setting it up. So they don't have a card that can be immediately impactful. You know, they do have to set these situations up. So in terms of control, it's not like, oh crap, we're gonna die, you know, let's use our stun here. You're going to have to set that up, and the stun as well is a higher level card for them, so it's not going to be something you're going to do straight away. So I've given them a 5, which I think is pretty fair. The big blade, so tanking 5. This surprised me because looking through their cards, they actually have some nice ways to tank. They can shield themselves, they can heal themselves pretty consistently. I think that this class has a little bit of tanking potential. I see it in a similar way to the Gemini here, that they can sort of take a few turns to help their team out. You know, when perhaps your main tank is, you know, needs to take a turn off, heal up a little bit, needs to sort of take a turn away from the front lines. You've then got these characters who can step up. It's also nice because because he's a melee character. You know, you're going to need some of that because you're going to be quite often put into precarious situations when you're going to be at the front anyway. So I think tanking potential. This isn't like the character does not want to be built as a tank, but they do have some nice little tanking abilities. So I think that you can probably play off of that, and you can definitely do some off tanking for your team. Damage and 8, they have very strong damage. This character will really benefit from using poison. So I think, you know, if you were to add up, this could be a 9 if you were able to combo this with poison, because they have lots of ways of attacking multiple times in a turn. So this could be a 9 as well, potentially, if you know, the right sort of stars align and you get poison and things, and some combinations with some items maybe. Support 1. They have one card, I think, that heals allies. Again, it's not going to be something that you're really going to do. You're going to be concentrating on yourself a lot of the time. But control, this character has, I think, the best control package available at starting anyway, right out of the gates, because they have a stun. It's a burn, but they can stun multiple characters in turn, which is hugely impactful. To be able to stun multiple enemies in a single turn is incredible. It gives your team a whole turn off to prepare to maybe do another big attack on the next turn. It's very, very strong. It is a burn, which is why I've given it a 6. What I would consider top tier control would be a reoccurring stun. That would probably, if you could reoccur stuns with this character, we'd be looking at a 7 or an 8 easily. But because it's only a one-off, I've given it a 6, but it's very, very strong. But they also have ways of immobilizing as well. They have a very good immobilize card as well. So I've given them a 6. I think that's pretty fair. So let's go through the totals and the averages. So, you know, you can see quite glaringly here. I mean, I've done the totals and the averages to give you an idea of roughly what kind of classes are versatile. Okay, this is not necessarily like saying, okay, you know, let's look at the Deathwalker being a 3 and let's look at the Bannerspear being a 6.25. The Deathwalker is obviously worse, or the Bannerspear is obviously better. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say in terms of versatility of what these different characters can do and what they can bring to the table for you as a team, this is sort of like where they're at. I mean, this is the abilities that they have. As you level up, you're going to be, you know, maybe you want to build the tank with the drifter, so then maybe you start taking tanking cards and your damage drops down. So these figures are obviously just right out of the gate the potential that I see of you being able to take cards. So this is not representative of how good a class is. I want to make that clear. I don't want to make any kind of assumptions like that. This is purely just to give you an idea of, I like this type of play, like I like to play tanky characters, then these are the kind of characters you want to be looking at. You know, damage, this is the kind of character you want to be looking at. I mean, they're all pretty good at damage, spoiler, but you know, there are certain characters that can be much better. Support, you know, if you enjoy that aspect of playing the game, these are the kind of characters that you want to be starting looking at. And control, if you enjoy the idea of screwing around with the board and messing people up, this is the kind of thing you want to be looking at. Okay, so those are all the averages and things. So next I've plotted onto a little plotter here just to basically give you an idea. I've put in the Gloomhaven starting classes here too, just to give you a little bit of an idea of sort of how I rank them within this. So you can see immediately, no surprise to anyone, they're all more complex, generally speaking. The average complexity here of Frosthaven is higher. And we knew that, everyone knew that coming in. Frosthaven is the successor. It's building upon the really strong foundation of Gloomhaven, and the character design now is really starting to get quite unique, and it's really starting to get further and further from the core mechanics of the game, and they're really starting to mix up the mechanics. So you're not going to see many characters. I mean, the Drifter, to me, the Drifter is almost the kind of this is the character that they have decided, hey, we are going to include a character that's got a new mechanic that's different, because that is the kind of like, that is the kind of caveat for every new character. You know, they have to be somewhat different. You know, each character has their own unique thing. And this was something that they thought was a nice, easy mechanic. And it's not going to add too much complexity to the game, but it's going to be fun to play, and it's going to fill a nice role, potentially, for people new to Frosthaven or new to Gloomhaven, new to Gloomhaven coming in. So I've got the balance spear up here because I feel like they, as we went through the previous slide with all of these averages, I actually initially, before doing this, I actually did this first, and I plotted these on here first, like where I thought they were from my initial impressions, and then I made this, and I realized I was way off with certain characters. So again, I thought that the Necromancer was going to be much further on the right than they really are. I still think that they have potential to be, but they don't actually have, you know, if you were to look at the support element, they don't really have much. So it's, you know, definitely a consideration to the fact that when you're building these characters, you're going to be going in one direction. They're more linear. You know, this versatility is also about how linear the character is. So you can see here that, you know, you could argue here that the Drifter should actually be much further across with versatility, but this is also to do with party versatility and who I would have in parties. So I feel like the Banner Spear is potentially stronger because they have control elements to their game too, and I personally rate control very highly. I probably rate it higher than support, to be honest. So these are just my thoughts and feelings on where they are. So this is no way some kind of damning of any characters. You can see down here though that, I mean, the Deathwalker is unfortunately down here on the low versatility range, and that's purely because they seem to be only good at one thing, and that is doing damage. That's not saying that they're a bad character, they just are damage focused. So in theory, you could bring down the difficulty of this. This could actually be lower in complexity because of the fact they only have one thing to focus on. But I've put them up there because I do think managing those shadows is a certain higher level of play. Like being able to manage where those shadows are and use them effectively is going to be tricky. So that's a consideration to that. The other thing is, with these other classes, I haven't done these Gloomhaven classes, I haven't actually rated them like in the same way that I did on the previous one. I didn't do this exercise with them. I've just plonked them in where I feel like they probably sit, roughly. So, you know, we've got the Brute down here. I think that the Brute is probably one of the least complex classes to play, but he has high versatility because he can stun, he can do damage, he can tank, he's got a little bit of heal if you want it. So he's just a very strong character that I think you can play in any play account, and he's going to work very, very well. Similarly to the Spellweaver, I think the Spellweaver is also very versatile because you can do support, you can do like a more of a healing build with them, you can use your summons instead as well for stuff like support and for tanking as well. You've got certain cards that will allow you to take damage and tank, and also you've got crazy amounts of damage available to you too. Cragheart is very, very similar. I've just put it slightly down on the complexity because you don't have to worry about burning the cards and then using Reviving Ether to get those cards back. So I've just put it slightly lower, but I find these two are very similar. Okay, so the other outlier we've got is the Scoundrel. Now the Scoundrel is, they've kind of, at least with the starting classes, they've kind of removed the looting class. So the Scoundrel does two things well: damage and looting. So whereas I think that the Deathwalker only does one thing well, which is just damage. However, they've generally made changes to looting across all of the new classes, so I don't really see that as, oh yeah, they're really good at that. So this type of class, not saying that we won't see looting coming back again in a big way in a unlockable class in Frosthaven, we might do, but the changes to looting in general I think is positive for Frosthaven, and all of the classes have been given just a little bit more value to their looting actions. So so similarly, I've dropped this one down, and the Tinkerer as well, easy to play. I mean, it has pretty high versatility, but in terms of a party makeup, this character drops down quite a bit. Even though they can do damage, they can tank a little bit because they have a bit of a health pool and they can heal a bit, but damage, they kind of fall off after a period of time. They're just not particularly strong, like they're quite low on everything, apart from maybe support, where I would say Tinkerer is a very strong support class. So the Tinkerer is again one that I struggle to place on this, but this should give you a rough idea of, and you can see here how complexity is going up with all of these classes and the kind of versatility of the classes compared to some of the Gloomhaven ones. Okay, so player count. So this is something that I've talked about before in my 8 beginner tips for Gloomhaven video. It's the first thing I talk about, is talking about party composition. So we're looking at how many people you're going to be playing with, how many characters are going to be being played with, and what is the usefulness of these different characters. Now again, this is all subjective. This is just me giving my ideas. So at 2 players, you're going to need to consider your party balance between tanking, support, and damage. That is important. At 2 players, you're going to find it hard if you have 2 characters that are just very good at one thing. So there are pairings of characters that you should sort of stay away from. So pairings would be someone like the Deathwalker and the Geminate would be a pretty bad pairing for a 2-player game, because neither of you is particularly good at tanking, neither of you is particularly good at support, neither of you is particularly good at control. So you're going to struggle. People are going to get hit and they're going to die. So that's not good. However, not to say that that absolutely doesn't work. Also, as you scale in player numbers, you can kind of make up for those deficiencies by just spreading the responsibility around a little bit more. So maybe you don't have lots of heals, but if each of you has a heal, then you can kind of cover that aspect if you need to. So the way that I've done this small chart here is just to show you what a 2-player, 3-player, and a 4-player group is going to look like. At 4 players, you can play whatever you want. There's absolutely no concern with that. To be honest, you can play whatever you want at any player count. I'm not telling you what you can and can't play. However, these are just my recommendations on you being able to find a group that will make it easier for you. So this is just my sort of personal recommendations for a easier, quicker campaign, basically, the progression. So 2-player, the only character that I completely swear off here is the Deathwalker. Not recommended at all. So the reason for that is, as I said, they only do damage, and that is it. And when you're 2 players, you're going to need somebody else to do a little bit of tanking. You're going to need somebody else to help you out. You're going to need someone else to help you out with a heal. You're going to need somebody else to help you out with controlling the battlefield a little bit. They don't do that. So this is the only character that I think I downright just do not recommend at 2-player. Now, as I said, I'm sure someone will completely prove me wrong and will make it work. But if you're coming to this fresh and you want a nice, straightforward game of Frosthaven, this is not a character I would recommend. So the only two characters that I think are just slam dunks really are the Drifter and the Banner Spear, and that's purely because they have a nice mix of everything. They don't have any control on the Drifter, but again, as long as you have support or control, like, you can kind of go one of two ways. You don't necessarily need them both. So I think that they're both very strong. The Necromancer, the Blink Blade, and the Gemini I've put as a caution. That's just because I think that, like, if you pair them with the wrong character, it could be bad. Certain builds might not be viable at the 2-player count with these characters too, so you need to think about those things. So you may be forced downplaying a certain route to be a bit more helpful than perhaps maybe you wanted to. At 3-player, pretty much Buckaroo, do what you like. Again, the only character that I have a slight cautionary mark against here is the Deathwalker, again, because all they do is damage. So again, if you were to pair the Deathwalker with the Geminate, with, let's say, the Blink Blade or something like that, then, you know, you're going to have 3 characters that, yes, they probably will work all right together, but you're going to have to kill things really, really quickly. And this character is going to be not contributing as much as you'd hope. Like I said, a 4-player, do whatever you want. This is no way a steadfast rule, but this should hopefully give you an idea. As you increase in levels, all of the classes do get better, so certain combinations may well be worth seeing out the early levels. So it may well be worth using some of these sort of more cautionary characters, because by the time you get to, say, level 3, level 4, the game becomes a lot easier because you get a certain card. So just because I'm saying this, it's just bear in mind that you may struggle initially. So if you're the kind of person who's going to go into a game and have your view of that game tainted by your first sort of 2 or 3 games, you know, and you lose all 3 of your first games of Frosthaven, this may be the reason why. So just something to bear in mind. And of course, it is all about having fun. So all of the classes are unique, and they're good, and they're going to be fun and interesting in different ways. None of them are bad. There's no bad classes. Everything can work and be fun, and that's part of the fun of it, is just going to be playing the game and just enjoying and finding these different characters and combinations and just playing the game and enjoying it. So I encourage you to research them all. You can see my videos that I've done on each individual class. You can click on my channel below and you can view those videos if you'd like to learn a little bit more in depth about the different characters. But do not write off a character. Just, you know, I would encourage everyone to do a bit of research before they start their campaign and to take a look at what they've got. Okay. So finally, so who should you play? And who am I going to be playing? Okay, so this is my sort of characteristics that I've got for these characters. So for a brand new player, easy game, I think it's the Drifter. The Drifter is going to work in every single situation. They've got a lovely suite of cards that they can have in their sideboard ready to bring on a mission to help them. Specifically, if you wanted to change around how you're playing the character in your early levels, that's very easy to do. You can fit into any role, as well as perhaps as you go up in the levels and somebody retires and you get a new character in, the Drifter is always going to be able to maybe switch into a different role if, say, oh, you suddenly get a really good tanking character gets unlocked. Well, maybe you could just change from being as much of a tank and bring some more damage with you. So the Drifter is just a very good complement and will be very easy to play character. You've got the Gloomhaven Veteran Power Gamer, which is going to go to the Banner Spear. So if you like to destroy things, have very, very big turns, and you want to play as the kind of, I guess, the alpha on the table, I think the Banner Spear kind of takes that award. They've definitely got the most potential to do the most damage, and they certainly, if you can play them very, very well, they have huge amounts of upside and potential to play. So if you are the person who really likes to win and really likes to win hard, I feel like the Banner Spear is probably the class for you. The potentially broken silliness award goes to the Necromancer. So the Necromancer is the one for me. They have a card that they get, I think it's a level 3, which allows them to spread damage around their summons instead of taking it themselves. This character I'm looking at and I'm just thinking, this seems like it could be ridiculous. So I haven't confirmed it yet. I don't know, because without playing it, I can't say for sure, but potentially this class could be broken. So we will see, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people playing it and coming up with how they've managed to make this class work in interesting ways. And yeah, a very, very interesting class for sure. Okay, the Brain Burner Mental Olympics class is the Geminate. So the Geminate to me is the kind of class that if you are someone who likes to play Gloomhaven at the highest level, you know, if you like to, you know, you're thinking about your hand of cards, now you're thinking about your other hand of cards, you know, you're thinking about your elements, you're thinking about your discard pile, because that's important as well. You're going to have to balance which cards you've got because of the fact that you need to change these states. When are you going to change states? It is a incredibly complex class, and it gives you a really interesting challenge. So if you're the person who really likes to get stuck into a chunky class, then I think that the Geminate is probably the one for you. It's going to give you a lot to think about. Combo goes to the Blink Blade, because I think the Blink Blade is the character that has the most kind of combo potential. If you enjoy the idea of you know, making counters, then removing them, going fast, then going slow, and you get the benefits at the right times, because sometimes there's benefits for going slow, there's benefits to going fast. You know, playing with your initiative, it's really gonna give you some potential to do some crazy things in this game. And if you're the kind of character, if you've played Gloomhaven, I'll make a small class sort of comparison here. I see this to be similar to the Eclipse class. Has some very interesting ways, more complex than the Eclipse class for sure, however has some really fun and interesting things that they can do. So if you enjoy comboing off and doing lots of stuff, then the Blink Blade's probably one for you. And finally, the Playing Their Own Game award goes to the Deathwalker. Now this is because, for me, this character just doesn't really participate much with the other characters. They're all about themselves, and they're playing their own game, and they're doing damage, and it's a fun game to play. It's not a fun game to play, but in terms of being involved with the other characters around the table, people aren't going to be looking at you for help. You're certainly going to be doing your own thing most of the time. Kind of again similar to the Eclipse class in a few ways, where you know, you're not going to be the character that people are going to look to. Now, that's not necessarily a hugely negative thing. You know, perhaps you like the idea of having a character in which you can internalize yourself and you can play your own game. You can figure out all of your little puzzle pieces with your shadows, how you're going to move those around. That would be a fun challenge for people, and it's a very interesting mechanic for sure. So that's not necessarily a negative thing. That just means that, you know, people aren't going to be looking to you for help, so you can just focus, laser focus in on what it is that you are doing. So I kind of like that about the class as well. So who am I going to be playing? So for me, these kind of middle three here of the Necromancer, the Geminate, and the Blink Blade, for me, have the most interest. Now that's just thematically, I really like them as characters. I think that they have some very interesting mechanics. All three of them have very interesting mechanics, and theme is absolutely dripping through these three characters. Not to say it's not through the other ones. I think that the Deathwalker has also got a lot of theme, but just for these, I don't know, it just really appeals to me, the theme and the mechanics just seem to go hand in hand with these three, so I'm going to struggle to decide between these three. You know, part of me really wants to play the Necromancer to see if I can break it. Part of me wants to play the Geminate because I just really think the challenge is going to be interesting. Part of me wants to play the Blink Blade because I just want to do crazy amounts of damage in certain turns, you know, and then you take a few turns off, or, you know, the combo potential is, again, very exciting to me. I think that plays to my tendencies as a player, just games in general. So there you have it. So that's just my summary of the different characters. Hopefully that's given you maybe some sort of idea as to what character you might be interested in playing. So if you'd like to learn more about these characters, you can check out my channel below, and there's a video on each of these where I go through the different cards and we can talk a little bit more in depth. But I'm excited for Frosthaven. I hope you are too. Please like this video if you did and subscribe. It really does help me out. I actually stream on Twitch fairly regularly. I stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday and Sunday. So come check me out. We play Gloomhaven. We play other games too. So if you're a video gamer, or if you're a Gloomhaven fan, or you want to talk Frosthaven, I'm there. So please come and hang out and say hi. Yeah, so please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And I'll be back hopefully soon with some more Frosthaven content and Gloomhaven content for you. I'm planning on doing some Jaws of the Lion content soon too, because that seems to be something that people are interested in, and it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to simplify those characters to make it like a beginner kind of class, but still unique. So, okay guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. See you guys. Bye-bye.